Hi guys, welcome to another episode of AutiMuse Podcast. Today I'm joined by an old friend of mine called Diego Prato, who's also the author of Classical Guitar Technique, and he's also a lecturer at the University of Salford. Well, welcome Diego. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing well. Yes, it's nice to see you again after a little while.
Yeah, yeah, because I know you've been teaching for many years now, and I know you've taught me from when I was in high school when Alligator Music was around,
hmm
and you taught me when I was doing my undergrad at Salford University. And I know
hmm
you've taught quite a lot of people with autism as well, like based on the music composition and in music theory as well. So, could you tell us more about your experience?
Okay, yeah. To be fair, my experience has been really good, and I think in some ways what I try to do is I try to. Of course, I am aware of the fact that that is present, but I try to do what I do with all my students, which is I try to think of each person as an individual, you know. So
Yeah,
each person's completely different
yeah,
and they will learn slightly differently and they will have certain things that they find easier and they will have certain things that they find harder and things like that. So I think it's kind of like with anyone, same with people with this particular condition. I don't think they can all be put into the same bag, in every aspect at least,
yeah,
Um, so so what I try to do is I try to learn about the individual, and I try to learn about how the individual operates and how they learn best, and that kind of thing. And I try to be as have my antennae as such as detecting
yeah,
as much as I
yeah.
can about all of that stuff.
Oh yeah,
And I find that the more I do that, the better I can teach the person.
yeah,
Um, so, there are certain things that I've noticed. Perhaps, there's the certain. It happens with people of all kind of branches of life, anyway. But sometimes it happens that you have to be a little bit more um, patient in terms of allowing more time to process
yes, yeah,
information,
definitely.
allowing more time to process information.
Mm,
I think that's very important, and making the other person aware that that's absolutely fine and that that's just
yeah,
normal. So I think that's very important. Other things that I've noticed are that sometimes it's not necessarily you might not get as much um, response, say from an emotional perspective,
yeah,
uh, as in terms of um, kind of particular gestures and things like that kind of you can read as okay they've got that or they haven't got that or things like that.
yeah,
Sometimes it's less obvious whether they got a particular idea or whether they didn't. So it's a little bit tricky. So you just keep making sure that the person is aware that you can repeat anything at any given time, and
yeah. I
things like
definitely agree with you
that.
there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So for example, um, things like I could say in a lesson, are you happy for me to move on? Should we look at this again?
yeah,
I don't mind going through it again. I can perhaps word it differently, things like that.
yeah.
That kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, so does that sound familiar to you from your experience and the kind of thing that we were doing when I was teaching you and that kind of thing?
Absolutely, yeah. Because I remember when I first started playing guitar, I could only hear like the what's been played. Like, say if you well, this applies to everyone for autism from different age groups, like mine and below. So it's because when you hear a piece of music, whether it's popular or classical, then a lot of autistic people can listen by ear, like hearing how it's played, but being unfamiliar, like on the music theory side of it, like what scale it is, the chords, and it's because I remember when I first started, I just learned the basic chords from a DVD called Learning Guitar for Dummies, and it really helped out a lot. And then as time went by, I started learning more about the music theory because I know you taught me before, like the before I started uni, I was still in high school at the time, And then I started to learn more about the different genres, how they played, and a lot more chords as well. Because I remember at the time when you taught me like the some sight reading skills, like you gave me a few books as well, and understanding rhythm as well as just like understanding the scales as well. Because I know like even when it comes to like composing music, because I know like when he taught the myself and other students like music composition, like being assessed on our on one assignment we did. I think it was the you remember the cross rhythm polyrhythm assignment with like irregular
Yeah.
and regular meter? Yeah, because
Yes.
I know it's like that progressive rock piece I did that I presented in your class on the I think it was my second year of uni. Well, that was my first year, technically speaking, but it it was pretty frustrating because I know like irregular meter can be quite tricky for some people with autism, myself included, and also just trying to like
Maybe quite
be
tricky for
more
anyone, actually.
yeah yeah like in and outside of the spectrum. Yeah, it can be tricky,
Yeah.
like especially irregular meter because I know there's like been a lot of famous songs that
Mm,
like I've written that sort of thing, like
yeah.
Pink Floyd and other jazz musicians as well. It's like
Yeah.
I know when it comes to music theory, yeah, it does require a lot of patience. Like I know you, because I remember I did an interview with Joe Threlfall a few months ago. Like he talking about his experience as a session musician, but how music theory was like a good skill and like how it was challenging at first, but once he got familiar with a few areas in the advanced level, he started getting familiar with it and started like progressing further and further. Because I know you taught like a lot of people with autism, like especially in the music theory, like um when it comes to writing songs, like because I know you've given me some advice on like when it comes to like writing songs for other
Mm-hmm.
styles of music, like what advice would you give in terms of like coming up with a more like easy ways to compose a song, but like not make it too stressful for them in some
Okay.
way?
Okay. I think songwriting is and composition is I've studied it a lot. You know, I did my masters in composition. I did a lot of composition at uni. I've written outside of university a lot and stuff and different styles, jazz, classical, pop, Latin music, etc. I've
Mm.
collaborated with other people writing. I've written just myself. Um, and I think pretty much all musicians that I've known agree that there's no specific formula that you have to follow to achieve a good composition in terms of, you know, step A, step B, step A, B, and C, and you're done,
Yeah,
kind of thing. You know,
absolutely.
and it's more mysterious than that. You know,
Mm.
of course there are principles and techniques that are well known that are, you know, critical to learn and things like that. But having said that, you know, the order in which we approach it and our particular kind of process tends to be individual as well, you know. So, like for example, a lot of people are very rhythm oriented, so they start with rhythm and they just need a beat to get started. And once they've got that beat, then they can write to it, and everything kind of flows from there, you know.
Oh yeah,
Some people are very melodic, so they need a little tune in their heads first, like a little melodic passage or motif or riff, whatever it might be, and then
yeah,
that needs to be the first spark. You know, some people start with words, you know, and then they just write some words, and then they try and put chords and rhythms to it, you know. And
yeah,
some people need some sort of um, visualization of some sort of actual thematic idea in terms of, you know, it's
yeah,
this so it's a happy love song. So they
yeah,
need the concept in their minds first, and rather than some kind of just sound idea of a chord or something, you know.
yeah,
So all of these things are valid, I think. So there's no
yeah,
specific reason. There's no specific order in which those things need to happen. But you know, so it's very personal in that sense.
yeah,
What I would say to a lot of students, um, actually, this is whether they're in the spectrum or not. It's just a general composition thing, but it's about structure. That's one of the things that is actually, I think, I find more less known of when people get to university and things like that. You know, they a lot of people get to university, and that sometimes I've been at university for a while. Um, they know about chords, they know about scales, they know about, soloing, they know about rhythm and stuff like that. And so they have all these very important skills, but they don't have the sort of structure thing down
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. Structure and form and things like that, and also developing ideas. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Mm,
a lot of the time and I was exactly the same, by the way, before I learned more about it.
mm.
But a lot of the time they come up, they start writing a song or a piece, excuse me, and they might have a riff, for example, that
Yeah.
they repeat a number of times, you know, and
Mm.
then okay, so that's, I've got 30 seconds of a song or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
and then okay, so what's the next part going to be? And
Mm.
they start perhaps exploring more, jamming within the same key until they find another idea that might perhaps is a lot of the times a lot of the
Yeah.
time happens to be in the same key, and then
Mm.
so then okay, it's in the same key, it's kind of the same it's the same tempo, similar groove, that can go next to it quite well. But they've not necessarily gone into the first riff to
No.
actually work out what are the kind of rhythms that already exist in that first riff,
Yeah. Like how
intervals
it's
and things like
structured
that.
in some way. Mm.
How can we reuse some of that same information that already exists in the same riff, in
Yeah.
the first riff, and reapply it as we write the second section, so that the second section is not just in the same key and scale and time signature,
No.
but it's also reusing and recycling information that was already presented in the first idea.
Mm.
You know, that's what development is actually about.
Yeah.
It's about continuing to recycle and reuse some of the information that you already presented at the start.
Yeah.
That's really more kind of deeper, more effective development.
Yeah.
More so than just okay, let's jam until we find another cool idea that's in the same key signature and in the same key. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that other
Exactly.
idea might, it's not that it's going to sound awful or anything like
Oh,
that, but
not necessarily.
it might actually be the start of another song
Yeah.
as opposed to a continuation of the original song. Because
Yeah.
really, particularly when you're talking about instrumental music, um, when you're talking about instrumental music and otherwise as well, but certainly when it's instrumental music,
Yeah.
you the way you develop a story in the way that, say, if you're writing words, you develop a theme. So if you're talking
Oh yeah.
about, you know, um, so you're talking about John and James or whatever,
Yeah.
then it's the story of John and James as you go on, right? It
Mm.
continues to develop, and what happened to John and James in the second chapter, and what happened to
Yeah.
John and James in the third chapter, and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So so John and James are like the little intricacies and the little motifs and the little
Yeah.
rhythms that are
Mm.
within that first initial riff or idea. That's
Yeah.
John and James,
Yeah.
What's going to happen to John and James in the next chapter, as opposed to John and James in the first section and Julie and Mary in the second chapter, and then
Yeah.
Tom and whoever in the third chapter. So what happened to John and James? I never even heard about them anymore after the
Yeah.
first. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. I
So
get what you mean. Yeah. By the yeah.
this is kind of what I'm trying to talk about. That kind of thing is way less under control for most students
Yeah.
than knowing some scales, knowing some. Of course, there's still
Yeah.
learning about scales and chords and all that, but a lot of that stuff is a lot more evident what you need to be doing. But
Mm.
this stuff, this kind of development stuff, is not as it's not as under control, I would
Under
say
control.
at that. So I would say to students, to make your life easier in terms of making composition make sense.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
Actually, I said whether you're in the spectrum or not, but certainly if you're in the spectrum, I think it's going to make your life a lot easier
Oh yeah.
to think about those things. And when you're creating sections and development, look really closely, as deeply as you can, at the information that exists, rhythm information and harmonic and melodic information that exists within the initial riff, the initial idea, and try and use some of that into your second section,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Mm.
So you can say, for example, take whatever the rhythm is
Yeah.
and change the pitch of the notes, but use the same rhythm with other pitches in the second section.
Yeah.
Example,
Yeah. You can like
that
make some
kind of thing.
improvisations and stuff. Yeah.
That kind of thing. So you're creating. It's new,
Hmm.
but it's directly connected and linked to what happened before.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's like how the story will go before the
It's a
actual end.
development of the original story or theme.
Yeah, because I know like this especially whether it's in the spectrum or outside of the spectrum. Yeah, it's like if you can compose like a pretty basic song. So if you say like A B C and so on, like how it's
Hmm.
supposed to start, but like in a basic scenario, like I know like for myself in particularly, and also you got Joe Threlford and other like other students as well, like who are starting off or who are graduated, and but like the I know the music industry is a really hard business to get to, especially when it comes to like really presenting yourself to the public, but also like you got social media as well. Like it's, because I know there is quite a lot of social media to present the music theory as well as like just showing off their instruments, like whether it's singing, playing guitar, like us for example, or playing the bass or drums, and on top of that, there's some people believe that social media is a really reliable source, especially when it comes to recognition. But also, you got like TikTok now; it's becoming really popular, especially for a younger audience as well as like older audiences as well. Um, because if well, going back to the music composition side of it, it's like presenting your composition in social media is quite reliable, but you also have to like come up with a backup plan. Like, what are your thoughts about social media? Is that as a way of like promoting yourself, like you're working like
My
in that
thoughts
sort of
about
thing?
social media,
Yeah,
as far as promoting yourself and your music, you say?
yeah, in that way.
Okay. Well, I think very few people that I know of are not doing it. Most
Yeah,
people are doing it. And whether they are, an independent kind of project that's just getting started, or whether they're a massive international superstar, of some sort, and anything in between. I think 90% or more of people tend to be doing it, and they probably are doing it because it's effective,
yeah,
and also because if you don't do it these days, perhaps you're missing out.
yeah,
Generally speaking, there are of course exceptions.
yeah, definitely.
Um, I'm sure, but generally speaking, I think it's kind of the way things have gone, and it's become like a standard now.
Yeah,
Standard way of operating. Kind of like there was bands before that didn't record albums,
no,
and for example, there were bands, for example, before that didn't record albums, or they only recorded an album every 10 years or whatever. But the
yeah,
vast majority of bands did like a steady stream of albums, and things like that. It's kind
yeah,
of, in a way, I guess, similar these days. Um, it's kind of like a standard that the vast majority of people tend to do. I
yeah.
think in terms of the things that it allows you to do as an independent artist, for example.
Oh yeah,
Um, you have a lot more at your disposal than you used to have. Kind of like
uh-huh.
similar to recording equipment, you're able to promote yourself and to have complete control over it, and you're able to
Yeah,
reach audiences in ways that before, unless you were fortunate enough to have a lot of budget and money and expertise behind you, it'd
yeah.
be next to impossible, I think, to do it.
Oh yeah,
Um, so I can put out, I can in from the comfort of my home, I can record a video tonight,
yeah.
and I can
Mm.
post it, and if and people anywhere in the world can look at it,
Oh
anywhere
yeah,
in the
mm.
world
Yeah,
for free, you know.
yeah, definitely.
Um, so that was impossible before,
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Um, yeah, so that allows a lot of great musicians to have exposure that before they wouldn't have been able to have, and also allows, you know, not so great musicians, I guess, to have the same amount of exposure, right?
yeah,
There's less of a filter in that way as well.
yeah,
Before, I guess, say record labels and people like that, I guess they don't always make the best decisions in terms of who to sign and things like that. But a
no,
lot of the times they did, and so you got to hear a lot of great artists and great music, you know.
yeah,
But whereas, and perhaps the people who are maybe not necessarily at that level, or not necessarily there yet with material that was worth showing on a
mm,
global scale,
yeah,
wouldn't necessarily get that chance. Whereas
yeah,
now I can have playing guitar for one day and I can make a video, and
Yeah.
everybody can,
Yeah.
can play them really well or really not well, and I can post it, and anyone anywhere in the world can see it.
Yeah.
So it's less of a filter, I think, in that sense as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
So obviously, like any technology, it's two sides of the coin: good things, bad things.
Yeah.
I think in general, um, it doesn't mean that the music kind of um, say business or industry, however you want to call it,
Yeah.
um, is easy or simple, or it's easier than it was
Mhm.
to get
Yeah.
exposure
Yeah. Because
on a massive scale. I mean, I think some, but I don't think it's made things easier overall. That's what I'm trying to
no, no, no,
say.
no.
Um, some things have been made easier, like the things we were just talking about exposure and about being able to put your own things out there.
Yeah.
Um, but then because everybody can do it, then how do you stand out? How do
Yeah.
you how do
Yeah.
you make
Because
yourself noticed from amongst the
yeah.
almost like overwhelmingly massive amounts of stuff that's
Mhm.
posted every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I remember speaking to Joe Threlfall the other day, saying that he's because he's been a session musician since I think during his time at university. Um, yeah, he did tell me that he tried looking for cruises as well because they're good in the entertainment, especially for music. So, for instance, you got like P&O Cruises based in Southampton, and also other cruise companies that most likely they look for musicians these days. But it is a really hard business to get to because of like Joe being on the autistic spectrum, including myself. I mean, I've applied to like go for P&O Cruises, but they look for people that have high level professional experience. Say if you like worked as a performer for many years, but also perform with big names, or like if like a top musical theatre actor as well. That's mainly what these companies look for these days. But the only question that I've written in my book is that how do they know you're not good enough if you don't give them a try? So it's like that's mainly the question that's not just like people with
Yes.
autism in general, but like everybody as well that wants to start off in the music business, but also like work for different companies, make good connections. But the rejection is really frustrating, especially for people with autism as well, like myself and other people as well. It's but yeah, I mean, it's
Have you done any? Sorry to interrupt. Have you done any auditions for cruises and things like that at this point?
I did apply for a piano cruise as a session musician, but they turned down my offer because of the my lack of experience. Because I've already have experience, well, producing music. I worked with a singer songwriter called Tom Lerner, who a singer songwriter from Salisbury, producing songs for his next album, and the jazz fusion band Wingspread as well. That I've just worked with them this past summer, and it was a great experience to start off and also have like connection with Habitat Studios at the city centre. And Sam Keane, who is a graduate from BIM, who also I knew from high school, he has worked with a lot of people um, during the in the industry, locally anyway. But also he as a producer, he is brilliant. He's worked with so many great people like Brendan Williams
Oh
and
yeah.
other people like from different universities around Manchester. But also it's he did tell me like how hard it is to get recognition, but also like trying to like make some money out of it as well. Because say if you because I know you've been a teacher for many years, and you also have the performance as well, like on the side as well, just like be recognized by the public as well. But it's yeah, for me in general, especially for like other people with autism as well, it's really pushing yourself out there is the main concern because in the book I'm writing right now, it's supposed to like really inspire people that there is like other ways to promote your work as a musician or a producer or as a composer as well. It's just like and also like explaining how social media can be really helpful, but also like promote yourself outside of social media because I know you have social media as well because I know you got YouTube and Instagram and many others. It's and I do believe it is a reliable source, but also it takes time to like get more audience members watching your work as well as like
Yeah.
as
I mean,
everything else.
I think there's two sides. There's obviously you have to produce good videos and all that kind of thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
and good content, good music, good music clips, good performances on video. But there's also all this other thing about there's the management of the online media and the marketing of it, and how do you expose yourself to as many people as possible, and because who do you know on social media that's going to mention you in their thing, that so that more people look at you and things like. There's a whole kind of skill aside from the playing skill,
Yeah,
which is how do you manage that social media channel, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, or anything else. How what do you do so that you what strategy do you have? What things you do so that you get more people looking at your videos once the videos
mm,
have been made?
yeah,
And that I'm not an expert on that side. I have to say, I have to be honest. I'm not an expert when it comes to that kind of thing.
yeah,
Um, there's so many people who can do it so much better than I can, and so I wouldn't necessarily give a lot of advice in that sense because it's not really within my skill set
no,
as such. It's not something that I would claim to have like proper expertise in that.
yeah, of
Um,
course.
I just kind of do it, you know, largely for fun and as a little bit of a networking thing between musicians that I know of, and musicians who are in kind of around there, and to kind of, I guess, keep my name out there and being, I guess, some sort of being present, I guess,
Yeah,
within the current community of musicians that I exist,
yeah,
within, and that kind of thing. And yeah, sure. Some, I get as time moves on, I get more people looking at it, but it's not like I have, hundreds of thousands every month coming
mm,
or every year either, anything like that.
yeah,
Added to the viewing to the viewers kind of.
yeah.
So I have to be humble enough and say that's not really my area of expertise.
No,
Yeah,
we all have like our own speciality, especially when it comes to music promotion and marketing as well. It's but yeah, it does take time. I mean, everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, especially when it comes to like your expertise in music theory and composition. It does take time to like come up with the theme, what the story is going to be about, and like how you structure it all the way through. It's but yeah, but also at the same time, you're not doing just one job, but also like doing others at the same time. So, like, say myself, like being a musician plus producer and composer, and yourself as a performer and composer as well. It's but yeah, I mean, it's like most people like who are starting off in music, like whether you're inside or outside the spectrum, you just like stick to one job. But like, how is it going to last? So it's you do make the decision, like, yeah, you want to do something
mm,
else. Like myself, I just like I from the beginning, I prefer like playing my guitar the most, but leave the compositional side out of it, especially in the production side as well, because it's but at the same time, it's you got to have a backup plan as well. You got to really find other ways to keep your career going, and at the same time,
oh,
it's you got to really push yourself out there.
yeah, yeah.
Like I said
I
before.
think I think in my experience, the majority of the musicians who I know who are full time musicians,
Hmm.
not every single one of them, there are certain exceptions for sure, but the majority of them do a combination of things.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So they, the combinations can vary, but for example, they might teach and they also perform, and they might be say those two, for example, they teach and they perform,
Yeah, they do.
or they teach and they perform and they produce, or they
Yeah,
perform and they perform and they produce,
yeah, and
or they
you don't
produce
have
and
to
they
like
lead,
teach
or they are
just one
also, say
skill.
for example, sound engineers.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So they might do a combination of things, including sound engineering as well as performing or teaching and
yeah,
other things. So they might do clinics, they might write books, like I have, written books and things like
yeah,
that. So and so on and so forth. So the majority of the musicians that I know who are full time musicians do a combination of things.
Yeah.
and it all adds up to a decent income and things like that. So
Yeah.
there are exceptions. There are people who just play. There are people who just teach. There are people who just produce, who just work with the music technology and things like that. But the majority, say, these days, do a combination.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it doesn't have to be in the music industry alone, because I've had some experience in the sound field, in theatre as well, because in fact I've been working with the this theatre company in Manchester. It's a small one, but they did like a play called The Windrush Warriors. It's based on like the on the Windrush in modern times, and it's also Jamaican themed as well. So it's like everything's pretty much reggae, but also you got like different
okay,
like, Caribbean cultures in the who are part of the Windrush scandal, like Jamaica, Barbados, and Antigua. But also like it's a it's meant to like be the because I know the Windrush is like the pretty sad moment, especially for like the
yeah,
people having to move away from their homes to like find work and stuff. But it also has like a way to like have a happy side to it, like make the audience laugh, but also like have a way to like think positive. Like you keep up with hope, and also just like keep your chin up, and also just like be more confident in yourself in some way. But it is a really good play, though. I really enjoyed like working with the Windrush Warriors cast, and the director has been really helpful too. So yeah, it's really good.
that's great.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So it's that'll be all for today. Well, thanks very much for your time, Diego. Also, for all the viewers out there, you can learn more from Diego from the description box below, and yeah, so you can watch his videos, and you can also he also teach you as well in different ways. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Edsel.
And
It's
thank you
lovely
very
to
much,
see
Diego.
you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.